Kids cartoons. There are several cartoon figureheads that have the power to transport us directly back into our childhoods. Some of these characters were heroes to us. Others cheered us up when we were sad, and yet others were just plain interesting to watch. But every child has also often fantasized about these characters coming to life in real life. So, what would that look like? Stay tuned and watch what the internet dragged in today with 10 kids cartoon characters seen in real life. And if you like our content, don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you can be wowed by other photos we regularly dig up from the web. Mufasa and Simba. What is it with children's movies and killing off parents? Am I right? Off the top of my head, Finding Nemo, The Lion King, Cinderella, Bambi, The Good Dinosaur, and Frozen all begin with a good old death blow to the parents of our protagonists. I suppose it's a common and compelling conflict that younger audiences will be able to connect with, but perhaps none were truly so gripping as much as the loss of Mufasa in The Lion King, which is essentially Shakespeare's Hamlet with a very furry cast. No, not those kinds of furries. Well, here's a fun fact that not many people know about The Lion King. Originally, Sean Connery was meant to do the voice of Mufasa. Could you imagine? I'll have my will to be shaken, not stirred. What's more is that the voice of Timon and Pumbaa were going to be voiced by Cheech and Chong. But corny jokes aside, The Lion King was one of the most popular Disney animated musicals and made about $987 million at the worldwide box office when it was released in 1994. And it fully cemented itself in the hearts of many young audiences, thereby making it a 90s kids staple. But have you ever wanted to see a real-life Mufasa and Simba? Take a look at this stunning photo of a real male lion with this tiny little cub. It looks almost straight out of the scene where Mufasa gives his famous "everything the light touches" speech. Mulan. Mulan is a fierce young woman known for stirring up controversy and trouble in China. First, she draws a lot of attention and trouble to herself for her clumsiness and inability to fit into her expected societal norms. Then she shocks and woos China after becoming the revealed hero and defeater of the Huns. But many fans have always wanted to see a real-life version of this cartoon fatal female. I just hope we could keep Eddie Murphy as the iconic voice of Mushu. Well, as it turns out, Disney stirred up the anticipation in fans when they gave a 2018 release date for a live-action Mulan. After their live-action Beauty and the Beast was received with high praises, we can expect an exciting movie. But Mulan, true to form, is stirring up controversy yet again after the film's director Nico Caro told MoviePhone, "From what I understand, no songs right now, much to the horror of my children." That's right, even though we all like to sing parodies of Be a Man when our dude friends do something silly, it sounds like the songs known to the movie aren't going to make it into the live film. And fans are having a fit over it. But regardless of how we feel about that, pictures have surfaced over what the expected real-life movie poster is to look like. Somebody is twinning. There's also an actual real-life Chinese film for Mulan that released in 2009 that many in the West may not be aware of. Check out this movie poster. Rapunzel. Rapunzel, a fictional princess hailing from German fairy tales, has showed up in a couple of cartoons. But she got the most publicity when she appeared in Disney's Tangled as everyone's favorite sheltered girl with bubbly charm. Fun fact about the movie, did you know that Rapunzel and Flynn, her love interest, have an 8-year age difference? Age is just a number, sometimes, unless it's illegal. And Rapunzel was 17 going on 18, making their romance awfully jailbaity. But fun facts aside, have you ever pondered whether there's a real-life Rapunzel out there? Well, she isn't locked away in a tower, but she lives in Russia and refuses to cut her hair. Her name is Dashik Gubanova Freckle. Now, if that doesn't sound like a real Disney princess name, I'm not sure what does. She has more than 104,000 Instagram followers, famous for her pictures flaunting her untainted and flowing locks. She hasn't had a cut in 13 years and refuses to do so until her hair reaches her toes. Once it reaches that length, she wants to cut it and donate it so that it can be made into wigs. You could say Miss Freckle has a good head on her shoulders paired with a heart of gold. Just imagine if locks of love existed in Rapunzel's universe. She probably would have been hunted down and gotten out of that tower much sooner. Teen Titans. Another cartoon that millennial kids are bound to recognize, Teen Titans still exists today as the retitled Teen Titans Go. Although I personally prefer the originals like the hipster I am. For those who may not be familiar, the show follows a band of supernaturally gifted heroes that battle evil in their city, all the while dealing with teenage problems like relationships, puberty, and what hashtags to use. Just imagine going through the testosterone roller coaster as a small green boy who changes into several different animals all the time. That might put a damper on your relationship goals. But where there are heroes, there is often a fandom. Where there is a fandom, there is often cosplay. and fan fiction, unfortunately. But thanks to crafty cosplayers, we can get a glimpse at what these quirky teenage powerhouses would look like in real life. And for your viewing pleasure, I found the best of the best to represent what our heroes and heroines would look like. Because there's nothing more disturbing than cosplay gone wrong. And when you're working with spandex or cheap materials, there's a whole lot that can go wrong. Kind of like whatever's happening in this real-life Robin's pants. Is he packing a cucumber? That's just all kinds of teenage awkwardness. I'm not sure I want to know. It's kind of triggering some of those embarrassing old middle school memories. Who turned up the cringe? Who turned up the cringe? Ugh. Kristoff from Frozen. Some of us see Frozen as a Disney success for feminists everywhere. It passes the Bechdel test with flying colors, and it doesn't depend on a dashing prince for happily ever after. Others just see it as that one movie that spurred a national sing-off of Let It Go until everyone was nauseated from its repetition, begging people to let it go. Some parents took to the internets parodying it and begging others to stop singing it. It's pretty funny when you consider that the singer is the famous Broadway voice of Idina Menzel. She's famous for starring in one of the earlier casts of the Broadway musical Wicked, and she also appeared as Maureen in the movie version of Rent. Watching her in her other roles is awe-inspiring. So it's funny that she's the voice behind such a tiresome song. But nevertheless, the film did win an Oscar, and it sold a crazy amount of merchandise. But what would Frozen's lovable character Kristoff look like in person? Well, sometimes some people just look like certain characters without even trying. Cue stage center, this guy. I can't believe it's not Photoshop. He must get a lot of fangirls blowing up his OkCupid inbox. Lucky guy. I guess I've been doing it all wrong. I just need to look like a character from a Disney movie, and I'll be all set. Ned Flanders. Everyone knows The Simpsons as the longest-running animated TV series since The Flintstones. If you're a 90s child, then it's older than you and still going. And it's so famous, Time magazine actually had the brass to name Bart Simpson as one of the most influential people of the century in a 1998 publication. The runner-ups for the spotlight must have felt embarrassed to lose to a cartoon character. The Simpsons officially released its first episode at the tail end of 1989, and it follows the satirical antics of a dysfunctional family known as The Simpsons. Every character on The Simpsons is based on, as well as named after, members of creator Matt Groening's family. I just hope they were all okay with it. After all, these characters are practically immortalized. I wonder who inspired a woman like Marge with her hedge of a head of hair. How does she even selfie? But I think I found the guy who is the real-world Ned Flanders. He looks darn diddly just like the real thing, doesn't he? A very convincing doppelganger. Flanders is known as the annoyingly optimistic religious neighbor in the series. He's a bit of a nerd and a bit of a Puritan. I wonder if his real-life doppelganger also believes that Harry Potter and his friends are going to hell for practicing their witchcraft. Popeye. Popeye is an older kids cartoon that might be more recognizable by the baby boomers, having its beginnings in the late 1920s. He was very relevant for the times in America. In fact, Olive Oyl and Popeye were based on real people from the town of Chester, Illinois. The man who inspired the Popeye character was named Frank Rocky Fiegel. He was a one-eyed man who shared Popeye's penchant for brawling and smoking the pipe. Parents of children in the Great Depression could also thank the characters Popeye for actually convincing their kids to finish their vegetables. The Great Depression saw a 33% increase in spinach consumption, and it was mostly attributed to Popeye's popularity. If that's all it takes for kids to eat their greens, maybe we should have more shots of Iron Man consuming spinach with his meals. And if you want to hear a sweet love story cuter than the engagement photos constantly popping up in your social media feed, the voice of Popeye ended up marrying the voice of Olive Oyl. People just don't meet the old-fashioned way anymore. So what did the real Popeye look like? We only have this old black and white photo to go by. You can really see some resemblance, even though the photo is kinda dodgy. But I also found a modern doppelganger that might just be the reincarnation of good old Frank. Now that's one mean-looking sailor man. ScoobyDoo. ScoobyDoo is another classic cartoon that was a part of many generations' childhoods. It began in the late 60s, originally with just 2 seasons of 25 episodes, but it spun off into several different series and even movies. The lovable dog known as Scooby is a Great Dane breed, and his name was actually inspired by a Frank Sinatra song that played on the plane while TV executive Fred Silverman was trying to come up with ideas. The Sinatra song, Strangers in the Night, features scatting in some of its lyrics. Silverman heard Doobie Doobie Doo and decided that the name of the show should be called Scooby-Doo. And then the hit show would go on to hold the record for having the most episodes in a cartoon comedy series. In 2004, ScoobyDoo aired its 350th episode, surpassing The Simpsons' lead at the time with 335 episodes. Scoob is a flighty dog known for always running away from frightening situations, which, given the show's theme, is all the time. This is a bit ironic considering that Great Danes in real life are actually pretty brave and rarely intimidated. But just what would our giant fur baby look like in real life? What a fantastic beast. I kinda want to adopt him and take him around with me to solve mysteries like a true meddling kid. Jessica Rabbit. If you grew up watching Who Framed Roger Rabbit, you might remember it primarily as the movie with several Warner Brothers and Disney cartoons existing in the same universe and sharing screen time. But there were definitely a handful of adult themes in the movie that, as they often do in kids' films, conveniently fly over the heads of children while giving their parents a chuckle. As Eddie Valiant said, the tale is primarily one of greed, sex, and murder, and Jessica Rabbit quite possibly holds the record for being one of the most sexualized, seductive cartoon characters anyone at the time had ever seen. We might not see the likes of such a femme fatale, especially in kids' cartoons, ever again. But we might wonder what she would look like if roles were reversed. What if everyone else in the film was animated and she was real? Well, we know the real talking voice behind Mrs. Rabbit is the sultry Kathleen Turner, but what would she look like realistically depicted? Wow, she's almost more amazing and attractive than the real fake thing? But alas, she's a married woman. Curse you, writers. Curse you, writers. But would she be married to a real-life white rabbit? This is so confusing. Why is bestiality gross in real life but magically okay in cartoons? Anyways, moving on. Andy from Toy Story. Here we are, a film that doesn't have confusing conundrums because the same species are married to the same species. Barbies fall in love with Kens, potatoes are married to potatoes, as they should be. Toy Story is unique for a few reasons. The first film was the first feature film to be wholly computer animated, ever. It was also a breakaway from the usual Disney formula of fairy tales and fairy princesses. And the trilogy of Toy Story is one that followed a very unique marketing tactic. The first two films were introduced to kids growing up in the early 90s or so, and by the time that generation was old enough to go to college, they released the third film about Andy going away to college. It gave the third film a very unique feeling with its timing. The audience practically got to feel as if they had grown up alongside Andy and his beloved ageless toys. It was a fun flashback to childhood days for much of the older audience. But guess what I found rummaging through the odd corners of the internet? Someone must have told this young man that he was toots a doppelganger of Toy Story's Andy, and real-life Andy decided to take that into his own hands by posting a picture that resembles a screenshot in the third film, almost perfectly. Well, that's it for today. I sincerely hope you were entertained by today's list, and I hope you're game to come back for the next. Remember, when you next get tired of adulting, there's always cosplay. Have a good one.